Well, what a video to film. I am finally filming with the two Unearthly palettes that I bought in September of 2022. I finally received replacement shades in the mail from them for a lot of the shadows, well, all of the shadows, a lot that were broken. Completely smashed when I received the palettes, and honestly, like, I'm not really a represser in the first place, but the shades that were smashed were like beyond repair. It was like just everywhere. And then one of these shades from the Weirdos palette was completely just dry, which I know is, I think, a common thing that happened for a lot of people. To just thicken the plot a little bit more, yesterday, well, maybe not yesterday, I'm not sure, but recently, I found out yesterday, that they are re-releasing actually the two palettes that I have in not the special packaging, but just like plain kind of cover packaging for cheaper. I'm sure because I don't have to pay the artists for the cover packaging, cheaper than I paid for these. And it's been a long time, like September, October, November, December, January, 5 months, maybe 4.5 months of waiting for these stupid replacement shades. And so it has like made me a little bit salty, especially because of how much hype Unearthly gets online, specifically on YouTube. And at this point, like, I don't know. At this point, I mean, at the end of the day, right, I got the replacement shades. It's all, like, everything's been sorted. But also, like, my initial order was, I think, lost in the mail, and I wasn't even notified of that. And then when I was like, yo, it was a while. I think I received these palettes in December, or, like, end of November, early December. And then they were like, when I asked them about it, they were like, oh yeah, like the package that was lost has been found and like we're resending it to you. And I was like, what? Anyway, so it's been like a whole ordeal, and these palettes were not cheap in the first place. So I don't know. I wasn't initially going to do like all my swatching stuff that I typically do for first impressions videos, but now I think I might, because these palettes are getting re-released. Could it be helpful? Kind of like a happy coincidence, at least for me, that maybe I actually am able to make like some sort of useful content with these at this point. But without further ado, let's just find out. I don't think I've even fully swatched these palettes, so let's just find out how we go, you know? Let's find out what the tea is. So let's just start with the smaller palette. So I got two palettes, the first being the Weirdos palette. I don't know. I really like the color story, and honestly, me as a collector, if I had everything go right with these palettes, and I really like the formula, I probably would have bought the other two palettes if they were still available in this like Halloween collection, because I love Halloween. It's like exactly up my alley, and I love to collect stuff. I love to have all my little sets. It's just like a personal whatever thing. But anyway, obviously that didn't happen. Let's just swatch these because I'm so curious. Okay, so the first shade in the Weirdos palette is the shade Invoke, which is a really sparkly purple. Then we have 3x3. This is a purple matte. Then we have Glamour, which was the shade that was completely dry when I received it, which I believe is a multi-chrome. A black-based purple, green, gold multi-chrome. Then we have the shade He's Sorry, which is a light pink matte. Then the shade Dangerous Type, which is a matte red. The shade I'm Flying, which is a really thick pink gold shimmer. Then we have the shade The Weirdos, which feels very creamy. Like, this feels like a cream shadow, honestly. It's a black shimmer with a red shift. So I think honestly probably on camera it's just gonna look like a black shade, but that's crazy how like just it truly feels like a cream. Then we have the shade I Bind You, which is a matte black. The shade Power is next, which is like a taupey, like purple. A taupe with like a purple undertone. Then we have the shade Snakes, which is a matte mid-toned green. The shade Feather, which is a shimmer. It's like a, I don't know if this is a multi-chrome as well. Ooh, that's really pretty. It's like a green, pink, blue multi-chrome with gold. That's really pretty actually. And then the shade Blessed Bee, which is a kind of like slimy green. See, like I really like this palette. I think the shades are really nice so far. Everything's swatching nice. It's really a shame that I had this experience with the brand because I don't know. Anyway, it just kind of soured my taste a little bit. But then I have the Warms My Blood palette, which I was really excited about because I love, fun fact about me, I love the Vampire Chronicles series by Anne Rice. So this was like a very, I don't know, I really enjoyed the fact that this palette was in here. But anyway, this is what the inside looks like. This is a mess because this was the shade that had all the like, or the palette that had all the smashed shades. The shade here, Queen, you can see like the pigment bled out around where, you know, the shade was smashed and one of the shimmers kind of exploded all over a lot of the shades. But anyway, I digress. I'm gonna try to swatch all of these on my arm, but I might not be able to fit them all. Anyway, and I really love the color story of this as well. So the first shade is a matte, the shade Drink, it's matte red. Then we have the shade Forsaken, which is a matte black. The shade Jessie, which is a gold pink green kind of shimmery shade. Really, really pretty. Then we have the shade Awaken. This was the main culprit of the shades that smashed everywhere. It's like a green, pink, gold, like kind of light iridescent shade. Again, really pretty. The shade Betrayal is a matte purple. The shade Alone is a matte neutral brown. Then we have the shade Queen, again, which was one of the ones that was very smashed. It's like a purple, pink, green, gold shade. The shade Acacia is a metallic, very bright gold. The shade Lestat is another kind of like gray with a purple undertone. Mother is a warm toned brown. Immortality is a metallic red. Charms is another shade that feels like legitimately like a cream. Not even like, oh, it's a creamy kind of feeling shadow, like it feels like a cream shadow. It's a black based shimmer with gold and pink shifts. Then the shade Resurrect. Oh, I realized I didn't even do up close shots of these palettes before I swatched them, but whatever. At this point, whatever. Then the shade Violin. So Resurrect is a cool tone purple. Violin is a warm, like camely brown. Then we have Centuries. Oh my god, are you kidding? And this shade is now dried out. I didn't even realize that. Oh my god. That's so irritating. Oh, that's so annoying. Yeah, it's, Then the shade Admiral's Arms. I'm not even going to swatch. I mean, I can't swatch Centuries. Honestly, fuck it. Maybe I'll email them again. I don't even know if it's worth it. Admiral's Arms is a really unique shade. It's like a silver purple green. Then the shade Marius is another matte red. The shade Stone is a matte white. Human is a metallic pink. And then Worship is a kind of like satiny brown. So this is the It Warms My Blood palette swatched out with the exception of the shade Centuries. Honestly, it's been sitting on my desk for a while, so I can't remember or I don't know if this shade was also dry when I got it, but it also could have just dried out in the like months that it's been sitting here. So it's just annoying, and I just wonder now like if other shades are gonna do that. It's just kind of like disappointing. Anyway, so now I'm not entirely sure if I'm gonna do eye swatches and up close swatches. I might just do it because these palettes are like gonna be available if you're curious, just to be like helpful. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and do an eye look. into the eye swatch portion of this video. I'm going to start with the Weirdos palette. If you haven't watched one of these things from me before, I always prime my eyes before every swatch with the NARS Smudge Proof Eyeshadow Base. It's not overly tacky and it doesn't have any pigment. And with shimmers, which I'm going to start with, I first use it dry, then I wet my brush, then I use my finger, just for reference. So starting with the Weirdos palette, the first shade is the shade Invoice, and Unearthly doesn't have shade descriptions on their website, so it's up to me. So like I said, starting dry. Using a wet brush. And my finger. And this is a really sparkly, like dusty kind of lavender purple with a ton of silver sparkle. Next we have a matte. This is the shade 3x3. I mean, that is really nice. It's just like a matte kind of dusty purple. I mean, they're nice. Okay, now another shimmer. I believe this is supposed to be a multi-chrome, the shade Glamour. So starting with this dry. Using a wet brush. And my finger. So this is a really, I mean, it was opaque right away. It's a black based, I think it's a multi-chrome. I can mainly see like this purpley pinkish shade with a green shift. I think there's a gold kind of like bronzy shift as well though. And it's not super sparkly, but it's really opaque and really smooth. Next up, we have the shade He's Sorry, which is a matte. I hate the way these mattes perform because they're so good. Anyway, obviously it's a really like light, cool toned pink matte. Okay, next up we have a matte, the shade Dangerous Type. And again, really nice. Just kind of like a pretty, I would say neutral, but I think it leans a little pinky red. And then we have a shimmer, the shade I'm Flying. This is with a dry brush. wet brush and my finger. So this is different from both Invoke and Glamour. It's a little bit thicker, not quite as, it's like more metallic throughout, rather than Invoke has like a lot of like sparkle. This is sparkly as well. It's just like a different formula, a little bit flakier almost. And it's a pink with a gold shift. Okay, we have another shimmer. This is the shade The Weirdos. Starting with a dry brush. Not sure how this is gonna go because it feels like a cream shadow, legitimately. And then I'm gonna take my finger so this is like a black metallic with a red shift, although you can't really see the red shift at all right now. It's very subtle and it's not super metallic. It's more of like a satin shade. And like I said, legitimately feels like a cream shadow. And then we have a matte. This is the shade I Bind You. Obviously this is just a matte black. Okay, another matte, the shade Power. So this is a really light, like gray purple. I don't know why I said that so weird. And then another matte, the shade Snakes. So this is again performing really well. It's a mid-toned, like true grass green. Okay, the last shimmer of the palette, the shade Feather. Starting dry. Using a wet brush. And my finger. So this kind of looks like an iridescent, like multi-chrome shade. It has like a blue kind of iridescent base with green and pink and like yellow gold shifts. It's really, really, really pretty. And then the last shade in the palette is the shade Blessed Be. So it's like a kind of like yellowy, slimy green matte. And that's the Weirdos palette complete. Okay, now we're starting with the Warms My Blood palette. The first shade in this palette is the shade Drink. So, also let it be known, this doesn't have any shimmer in it, the shade. It's just leftover from previous shades that I've swatched from the Weirdos palette, but this is like an almost orangey toned red. Really, really pretty. And then the next shade is another matte, the shade Forsaken. That's a really nice matte black. Okay, it's a different day, but the same palette. Back to finish the eye swatches. So now I'm going to take the shade of Betrayal, which is another matte shade. It's a really warm toned matte purple. Very nice. Next up is the shade Alone, which is another matte. This is like a purpley toned, really deep brown. Both of these shades performed really well. Next up we have the shade Queen. Obviously a shimmer. Starting with this dry. Taking a wet brush and my finger. So this is another really flaky, shimmery shade that has like a lavender base with pink, a pink shift and a gold and like orange sparkle and green as well. I would say I would probably categorize this as a multi-chrome. And then another shimmer, the shade Akasha. Again, going in dry first. The wet brush.
and my finger. This is just a really yellow toned gold. Not more like a traditional kind of metallic, doesn't have any shifts to it and not as sparkly. Next up is the shade Lestat. So that's very much a true gray, like a cement gray. And then next up we have the shade Mother. And that's a really, like, almost pinky, warm-toned, rosy-toned brown. Okay, now we have another shimmer, the shade Immortality. Starting with this dry. Using a wet brush. And my finger. This is a metallic, just very true red, not super sparkly, leaning almost satin, which is honestly typical of metallic reds. And then next up we have the shade Charms, which I've used and I used in my first impressions, and this feels like a cream shadow. So I'm going to start with this dry. Wetting my brush. And using my finger. Yeah, it feels very creamy. It almost has like a black base with a purple. It's a purple shadow, like a warm purple shadow, which with what looks like a black base, then almost like very peacey orange sparkle, and then there's also like a goldy green shift as well. Very dynamic. Next up we have another matte, the shade Resurrect. So this is a cool toned, mid-toned purple. And then we have the shade Violin. we have, this is like a light neutral, like camel-y brown. Okay, skipping right on over the Century shade because it is unusable. No eyeshadow, listen. No eyeshadow should sound like that. Anyway, Admiral's Arms is the next shade. Starting dry. Wetting my brush. And my finger. So this looks like kind of just a regular silver in the pan, but it's really unique actually. It has like a very strong green shine to it. And there's like pink in here, like a purpley pink in here as well, like a lavender is a better way to describe it, but it's really, really unique. And then the next shade is a matte, the shade Marius. So this is a very just true red matte. And then we have the shade Stone, which is a matte white. I can already tell you that much. That honestly is a really nice matte white. And then we have the shade Human, a shimmer, starting dry. Going in with a wet brush. And then taking my finger. So this is a rosy shade with a ton of like silver sparkle. Really sparkly, but not quite as flaky as some of the other shades. And then lastly, the shade Worship. So starting dry. Going in with a wet brush. And my finger. And this is a metallic, like chocolate brown. Again, almost on the satiny side. One that doesn't necessarily excite me like when I swatch it or like look at it, but I know I'm gonna love it in looks. And that concludes the eye swatch portion. I think I'm going to use a mix of shades from both of the palettes for my first impression. I think I kind of want to do like half red, half purple. I'm going to start with the shade He's Sorry, this light pink from the Weirdos palette. And as always, I've primed my eyes using the NARS Smudge Proof eyeshadow base, and I have not set my lids. And I'm just going to run this shadow through my crease. just all through my crease. Honestly, like the thing is, so far this matte is super nice. And even based on swatching, like the shadows seem nice, which kind of adds insult to injury in the sense of like, I could be like ranting and raving about how much I love, you know, Unearthly's formula and like all this stuff along with everyone else, but I just feel like it was a lack of communication. Honestly, I should just talk about this at the end of the video, but just the lack of communication, the lack of just like, it just kind of also put a weird taste in my mouth when they've released and launched like so many new things since these palettes, but I didn't get like replacement shades, and I'm sure there are people who are still waiting for replacement shades, like, so it's like, I don't know, like if you're having like this level of issues, like people experiencing issues, whether it be broken shades or dried out formula or whatever, it's like, can't you kind of like focus on fixing that for the people who bought your palette? Because when you're releasing new shit all the time, then you have to like, you're adding more work for yourself, and those are extra orders that have to be shipped out and dealt with and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of felt a little weird to me. And even when I sent follow-up emails about the shades, because I didn't receive any even notice that the shades, replacement shades shipped, I didn't get a response, and it's just kind of like not great all around. I'm gonna take the shade Marius. This is upside down, but it's this matte red from the It Warms My Blood palette. And I'm gonna put this in the outer half of my crease. My outer corner and then the outer half of my crease. And it's definitely not that I want these palettes to be bad. Like, I don't want that at all. Don't get me wrong. But then it almost is like, in a way, makes me even more upset that I'm really liking the way these shadows are performing, because it's like, what am I supposed to do? Where do I go from here? Okay. I guess just so I use more shades from this palette, I'm going to take the shade 3x3 from the Weirdos palette and put that in the front part of my crease and hope to make it look better than it's looking right now. Okay, and now I'm going to take the shade Alone, which is this dark brown from the It Warms My Blood palette. That's the other thing about Unearthly's color stories. I always feel like there could be deeper mattes. I feel like that's one thing that is always missing for me from them. Because this brown is the deepest in all the palettes. Although there is a matte black, so, you know, I can't complain too much, but regardless. And this brush is just stained bright green. It's actually completely clean. But I think it's permanently going to be this color. And I'm going to take this through my entire crease. See, and like, again, it's like, they're honestly really nice mattes so far. Like, they build really beautifully. They're blending really beautifully. For my lid, I think I'm going to take these shades Charms, which is this purple shade down here, and Queen. First, though, I'm going to put some NYX glitter primer all over my lid. So then I'm going to take Charms, which is, yeah, this is a shade that feels like legitimately a cream shadow. And I'm going to put this in the middle part of my eye. Okay, so my camera cut off, so you missed me applying the shade Queen, but luckily I haven't done my other eye yet, so I can show you that application now. Okay, so now I'm going to take Queen, which appears very golden on the eyes. at least paired with these shades. Then I'm going to take Charms and Queen on my fingers and intensify these shades on my lid. Okay, I'm quickly going to hop off camera and do highlighter and blush, and then I will be back. Okay, so for my lower lash line, if you're curious, by the way, can you guess what highlight I used? From the Blend Bunny Noctilucent and Highlighting Palette, I used the shade Dreamlike and the Melt highlight in the shade Genesis as my blush. But now I'm going to take that same Maria's shade. Honestly, I think I'm just going to take that underneath actually, well, I guess I could keep it the same. Whatever, I'll just keep it the same. I'm going to put this in the outer part of my lower lash line. And then I'm going to take 3x3 and put that in the front part. And then I'm going to take that same deep brown called Alone and put this also in my lower lash line. And then take the shade Hues Sorry, the pink, and blend everything out. And then I'm going to take the shade Jessie on my pinky and just put this in the front part of my lower lash line. And then I'm going to take a matte black. I'm going to take the shade I Bind You from the Weirdos palette. This in my outer corners. Then for my inner corners, I'm going to take the shade Feather from the Weirdos palette, which actually shows up really pink. And then just for shits and gigs, I'm going to take the shade Glamour, the problematic shade, and tap this over the black, my outer corner. And then very last and most exciting, I think, I'm going to take the shade Stone from the It Warms My Blood palette and put this on my brow bone. Okay, so this is where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to finish up the rest of my face and come back, show you the finished look, and we'll debrief about my thoughts so far. Okay, and this is the finished look. I have to say I really, really love how it came out. On my lips, I have the Makeup Forever Artist Color Pencil and Endless Cacao and the Essence Soft Contouring Lip Liner in the shade Lost in Love with the e.l.f. Lip Plumping Gloss in the shade Peach Bellini. Okay, so here's the thing about these palettes. Okay, let me just... So, basically, these are my thoughts. Now, in terms of the actual performance of the shades, the mattes, at least the mattes I used, honestly performed so beautifully. Like, they were really, really nice mattes. They blended well, they built well, they were super easy to use, like really, really beautiful matte shades. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. And the shimmers also are like really, really pretty. A lot of them are super shifty and sparkly, and like I really enjoyed using them. And honestly, if I understand why they're getting so much hype, because if someone made an order for a palette, you know, received the palette, no issues with shipping, no issues with like how the product was received, and you used it and like this is the outcome, you know, that's how the shades performed, of course you're gonna be like, this is amazing. And I really wish that I had had that experience. Unfortunately though, like that wasn't my experience, and it also just really adds insult to injury, the fact that this shade, the shade Centuries from the Warms My Blood palette, has dried out in the time that I received the palette and then waited to receive the replacements. So it's just a little
I don't know. It just makes me wonder, and like I said before when I was doing my shadows, I'll just reiterate it, like, it's one thing altogether to like send out a batch of palettes and have like the formula be unstable in shipping or have like issues with, you know, the shadows or whatever. Not the first or the last brand that's going to happen to. But I feel like other brands have just dealt with it in a different way, and I feel like there wasn't a lot of communication on their socials or via email when I, like, you know, reach out to customer service or whatever. And then meanwhile, you're waiting for, you know, replacement shades or whatever, and then you're seeing the brand like launch all these products while you're waiting and not hearing like really responses back. So it kind of is just like, well, what the fuck? Like, imagine, I mean, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but like, imagine if Shroud, while they were trying to sort out all the shit with their, like, not Halloween, like the initial collab with Betty Jean, while they were sorting all the shit out with that, then they were also like releasing other products, wouldn't have gone over super well. So that was just like kind of my perspective from it all. And like, I'm not trying to be shady or anything. It's like legitimately just my, you know, thoughts. But also it's like, I just don't really get like, I don't know if you're like trying a new formula or what, and you haven't like tested how the like shadows are gonna like not wear but like last in the palettes, and like it didn't take that long for the shades to like dry out. So you would think that like, I don't know, would you not notice that? And like the process of creating these shades, like I don't really understand. Anyway, that's just like, obviously I'm talking out of my ass. Like, I don't really know what it takes to, you know, like develop and make shadows, but I also have tried a lot of shadows from a lot of brands. So, you know, it's just kind of like my 2 cents. And I mean, ultimately the thing is like, I have really enjoyed how these shadows perform, but I think I'm still like, I would be hesitant in the future to purchase from them just because I don't know what I'm getting, like, you know. And like, same thing that I would say to you guys, like if one of my real life friends like asked me about this brand or whatever, I don't know that I would like recommend buying from them, just because I feel like I can't like comment to what you would get with this brand. Like, I could be like, yeah, my experience with like using the shadows has been good, but I don't know how long your palette's gonna take to come. I don't know if all your shades are gonna like get smashed. And it's like, for example, like Kaleidos, when I first received the Club Nebula palette way back when, some shades were smashed from them, and then they're different, like, I guess, levels of indie brands or whatever. And like, I have like so much empathy and compassion for like people running their own business. Like, I totally get that. But it's like, they responded to my email right away. They immediately sent out like a new palette with like tracking information for the shipment and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just like, things like that I think go a long way. And again, like I said, it really has like also extra soured my opinion, the fact that one fucking shade is dried out now. And honestly, just for like reporting's sake, and like the fact that I did spend like a good amount of money on these palettes, like ultimately, if your shadow formula is unstable and doesn't like last well in palettes, like that's not my fault, you know, like as a consumer. I really feel like at the very least, I wonder if these even have, and technically on the back they say that this palette has a 12-month shelf life. So at the very least, your shadows should not dry out within a year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, so I'm not gonna sit here and say like I would never buy from Unearthly again, and I'm not gonna like necessarily be like never buy from this brand. I just want to like say, like, based on my experience, I personally couldn't vouch for like necessarily what you would be receiving. or like your experience with that, but that's just kind of my thing. But if like, because the shadows are actually quite good, if they have like a launch in the future that I really, really love, like I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it, but I really would have a long think about it, and I might like wait for other people to like buy it and see kind of like how it goes with other people before I would like decide to like buy from them again. That's just kind of my opinion. But like ultimately how the shadows performed, they are like, you know, really nice. So it's kind of just like really gonna be up to you. I don't want to like super sit here and be like, these are amazing, because like I can't guarantee you that you're not gonna get like a palette full of Smash shades and then it's gonna, you know, take 6 months for them to eventually get back to you and send you replacement shades. But that's just like my thing. And then also it feels kind of weird that like obviously you have just kind of like sorted out the issues with shades. Like it has taken you this long to even like send out replacement shades from the initial launch of the palettes, but then you're re-releasing them like before you've even like settled everything. I mean, maybe they have sent out like every single replacement shade, I don't know, but it's just like, it just is like a little odd to me, you know, their kind of decisions. But that's just me, and these are just my thoughts. And it's a little disappointing because I want so, like, I do love these palettes now, you know, and like I want so badly to love the things that I buy and like love my makeup. I'm not out here trying to have bad experiences. I want to like love everything that I try. But yeah, that's kind of just my 2 cents. I think I might still do a 3 looks 1 palette with both of these palettes just because they are getting re-released as permanent palettes. If anyone was interested in buying them or have already purchased them and etc., like, you know, want videos on them, and also like I bought them, I want to use them. If they're gonna be like permanently around, I might as well make content with them, you know. So yeah, and then I'll keep you guys updated in terms of like whether or not they even respond to my email. I'm gonna be like, hey, me again, one of the shades. Are you even still sending out replacement shades? Anyway, I'm gonna leave it here because I'm sure this video is like super fucking long. So thank you so much for watching, and I would love to see you in my next video. Bye guys.